I am so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to be with all of you. It's National Recovery Month. It's a time to celebrate recovery. And I've got a lot to celebrate. I've got a lot to celebrate. The title of this piece is Struggle Made Me. And I'll get to why that I chose that title in a little bit. First, what I want to invite you into with me is just a little bit of what I've come to learn as finding the middle. And that is a very special place. It's a place of pause, a place where I can make space and invite in a bigger energy. So just find a posture that allows you to find a sense of stability, a sense of foundation, a steadiness in your being, a steadiness in your being. If it's sitting, feel what's grounding you, right? Maybe your feet, whatever's touching the earth. That's our base or foundation. If you're on the floor, maybe it's your sits bones. If you're standing, it's your feet, whatever it is that touches the earth. And make that conscious contact, that conscious connection with the mother herself beneath you. And once you sense a sense of steadiness in your being, the middle is a place where it's not too rigid, it's not too loose, right? Kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, not too hot, not too cold, just right, right? And you feel it in your being. And once you feel that, the invitation is to soften the grip of whatever may be causing a sense of tension in your body, right? And first we start at the structure, at the level of the body, right? If there's something there, simply soften the grip. Not saying run away from it or pretend like it's not there, just soften the grip. And if there's tension in your energy, can you allow that to soften? If there's tension in the mind, can you allow that too to soften? And then in the space that gets created, once we find the middle and soften the grip, there's space. And the invitation there is to invite in your breath. Invite in the breath. Breath is life. Just become conscious of your breathing. And then with me, take a big, deep breath in. Exhale, let this one out through your mouth. Let your jaw relax. And then when you're ready, please open your eyes if they were closed. Come back into this space together in community. In this space together in community. I love that. I love that. So again, I'm grateful to be with you. I'm so grateful at so many levels. And once again, I'll get to this a little more, why I chose this topic or this title in particular. It's Struggle Made Me, right? But for now, I'm going to start the way I start just about everything. Any of the speaking venues or teaching venues are at, when I introduce myself the same way. I'm Nikki. I'm an MBA. I'm a yoga therapist. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. I'm a technology patent holder, even though the patent's now expired. I'm the founder of a program called Y12SR, which is the Yoga 12-Step Recovery. I'm an Ayurvedic yoga specialist. I'm an addiction recovery specialist. And the big three-letter word is and. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a codependent. I'm the survivor of both childhood and adult sexual trauma. I'm a domestic abuse survivor. I'm a love addict. I'm a former commercial sex worker. And I'm the mother of 2 living and 1 deceased child. I'm the grandmother of 5. I'm the great grandmother of 3 beautiful great grandchildren. And I'm a spiritual seeker, a nature and dog lover, and a lover of life. And I could probably go on with those ands for a long, long time. I'm all of that, and so much more. My addiction recovery process includes relapse. I was clean for 8 years and then I relapsed. And then I was clean for another 4 years and then I relapsed again, right? And it was after that second relapse that I recognized that there were some disconnected or missing pieces in my recovery. I'm grateful to say that it's now been 21 years since that last relapse. I celebrated 21 years mid-July, right, since the last relapse. And I assert that much of it has come, this last piece, by connecting those missing pieces and filling in all the gaps. And then I recognized that there were a ton of others just like me, right? And that was when in 2003, Y12SR was founded, right? To, support myself and others who were just like me, who found that there may have been some missing pieces in a platform for what I love to call sustainable recovery. And I always mention, I'm not saying all of this for what I've heard called inspiration porn, right? This isn't for that purpose. The title of this piece is Struggle Made Me, right? This title is actually, it's my grandson's brand. See the shirt, Struggle Made Me. I love this. It's the name of his company. And I love that he chose this name. It's a reflection of his life for sure. And without question, given all that I just said, it is definitely a reflection of mine. Through my lived experience in the world and work with hundreds and hundreds of people, what I've discovered is that a big part of this healing of addiction and trauma lies in how we reintegrate all these parts of ourselves, right? My healing, a lot of it came through 12 steps and the 12-step program. I found the 12-step program in 1989, right? And, so grateful, as, you heard it kind of in what I just said, through the course of those experiences in the throes of addiction, when I walked into the rooms of 12-step programs, truthfully, I could barely put a sentence together, right? I could barely put a sentence together. And, 12-step program talks about jails, institutions, and death. And all of those were a part of that experience. The death of, I'm here, so it's not the physical death of me that I'm speaking of. Although, I've seen so many brilliant, witty, wonderful beings, right, who are no longer in this plane of existence as a result of some kind of death related to, in this case, particularly alcohol and drugs, right? Witty, wonderful, brilliant beings that are no longer in this plane of existence, right? And think about it. I don't know if you have seen statistics or numbers from simply overdose deaths in 2020, but more than 90,000, a 30% increase over the previous year, left this plane of existence as a result of an overdose death, right? Brilliant, wonderful, witty sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, no longer here as the result of an overdose death. And what, as I was saying before, that I've discovered for me, and over the course of the years now, working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people like me, right, is that a big part of this healing is how we reintegrate all the parts of ourselves. So, like I was saying, I walked into the rooms of a 12-step program, and I really did find people there that loved me till I could learn how to love myself. The 12-step program is and always has been my lifeboat. It is my lifeboat. I assert that a part of the cognitive healing for me has come in what I've learned and continue to learn in 12-step rooms, right? And at the heart of that is practicing principles, right? We say practicing the principles. We practice the principles in all our postures, like we practice the principles in all our affairs, right? So this reintegrating, because I want to get back with that. The reintegrating all the parts of ourselves means the parts of ourselves that we might have ignored or denied or abandoned or created some kind of pretense around, right? When I say I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a codependent, I'm the survivor of both childhood and adult sexual trauma, right? Those are parts of myself that I may have cast off. I may have labeled bad, awful, and wrong, right? Maybe it's even some part of ourselves that didn't conform or match to an idealized cultural view, what people said I should or shouldn't be. All of those parts are still there, right? All of those parts, all of them, the things that I described there for me, right? Those are part of what we talk about in 12-step program. They're part of the committee. They're part of the committee, right? And I've learned that integration is cultivating a deep relationship with all those parts of the and. Because when I pronounce one part of myself wonderful and right, MBA, somatic experiencing practitioner, founder of Y12SR, yoga therapist, when I pronounce those wonderful and right, and I pronounce the other part of myself bad, awful, and wrong, not worthy of being acknowledged or recognized, what happens is there becomes a split. A split is created. There's a separation. There's a fissure in my being, right? And that split erupts into an internal war inside. The committee is in session and it's loud and it's crazy and it's arguing and it's fighting and all that's going on inside my being. All of that is going on inside of my being. Parts of myself, for real, parts of my brain actually are at war with each other. And it's causing chaos and disruption, not only in my inner being, It causes chaos and disruption and all those things in the outer world, in my outer world as well. So the healing work for me has been reintegrating all these parts of myself. The pieces and fragments that I left out there, here, there, and everywhere. I mean, I left here, there, and everywhere. Right? And what's needed for that to support the depth of that kind of work? I need a platform, if you will, and a bunch of tools within that platform for relapse prevention and reintegration, right? What I know is I don't want to go back there again, right? That does not serve what I say is most important to me, right? It doesn't match with what I say is most important to me. So what I need is a platform for sustainable recovery and reintegration, reintegrating all parts of ourselves. And it's the platform that's supported by what in the 12-step world we talk about as understanding and application, right? It can't just be knowing this stuff. There also has to be application, understanding and application that it works. And here's what the framework for the platform looks like for me, right? It looks like cognitive work. And for me and many others, the very practical basis of that kind of work is the 12-step program, right? And, I love the 12-step. I think the 12-step program is absolutely brilliant, the 12 steps themselves are absolutely brilliant, right? And I love that there's no cost associated with them, right? I often work with folks who don't have a lot of material resource, right? And you walk into a 12-step room and they tell you, you're more important than your money. And that's a phrase I love. You're more important than your money. But this platform for me doesn't just include 12-step work. It also includes work with a therapist. It includes things like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. It includes motivational interviewing and many, many other forms of those kinds of things. And doing that cognitive work is necessary. It also includes somatic work. So for me, that's based in yoga and yoga philosophy and yoga practices. I discovered that this has been such an important missing in my healing. In Watch Over Heart, the work that I founded since its birth in 2003, the theme has been the issues live in our tissues, right? So we got to find a way to get these things moving because they're stuck, things that are stuck or things that are congested or trapped that can no longer move. Those issues live in our tissues. Right? And yoga philosophy and tantra and those practices have been such an important part in that, right? It also includes, I think about this in terms of neuroscience, right? But really at its root, that's a big word and we don't necessarily have to go there. At its heart, is understanding and befriending my brain, right? Is this whole idea, the committee lives here, right? All of this work is about mastery over stinking thinking. The founders of the 12-step program says that's the root of our problem. And at its root, it's that we forget who it is who we really are, right? And so it's that. And within that as well, this whole idea what fits with that as well is trauma healing, right? And I love the trauma healing work from the perspective of the ancient art and science of Ayurveda, right? And the way that it approaches trauma healing and somatic experiencing, which is work that I absolutely love, and it found a way to bring into the yoga practice itself, right? And then lastly, for this platform, for me, has to do with spiritual practice, right? I love that the root of the word spirituality comes from Latin, a Latin word, which literally translates to from breath. It literally translates to breath, signifying life, right? So spiritual practice is this connection with something bigger, connection to some higher reality, connection, right? And once there is this platform, I can begin this work through this platform of reintegrating all those parts. Again, the parts that I've left out there, here, there, and everywhere. However, I need a platform to do the depth of that work. The depth of that work, I love. It's simple, but not easy. It is simple, but not easy, right? And here's the deal. Once there's integration, then there comes this possibility to recognize, while all the things I described when I introduced myself are experiences and are an integral part of this being human, the truth is that none of those define me. Truth really is none of those are who I am. I am a human, and all of these are part of my human experience. And I'm something much, much more, right? And the truth is through all of the struggle, right? The struggle made me, right? Seeing it through, the struggle actually made me, right? And finding gratitude, even in this moment, for all that. Hey, I love it. I do want to bring up one more thing and talk about one more thing relative to this. And for this, I'm actually going to show a slide. There it is. I hope you can see that. This comes from one of the Upanishads, right? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I always tell people, I love the study of sutras and Upanishads and all the text and things like that. And my Sanskrit is awful. I compare it to that line out of the Beyonce song, a little bit of Alabama, a little bit of Louisiana, because it's not good. So I'm not even going to try and pronounce that Upanishad. But I love it, right? There, from this ancient text, the yogis describe the process of transformation. They look at this as a model for transformation, right? And transformation being, movement from here to there, right? How we make that shift, right? And so this is what they say. The first thing we have to recognize is dukkha, that suffering exists, that suffering in fact exists, right? Jnana is knowledge of that suffering and that it affects me. Each is a desire or a willingness to change, right? And I love that. A willingness to change, right? A willingness to change. And then there's kriya. Kriya actually transforms into action, right? We can have the willingness all day and all night long, and that's a prerequisite, right? But it comes in the action. It comes in the action. And then there's dharma, which means there's bigger work in the world, right? It turns from an I into a we. There's bigger work in the world. And then there's swadharma. And this was one of the reasons that I wanted to bring up this slide. That means personal dharma. And this one, again, for me, is the struggle made me. If I had to go through all of the things that I went through in order to be right here, right now, in this moment, talking to you, doing the deal relative to that, today, I'm okay with that. That struggle made me. That struggle made me. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful. And then the last one here, the Yoga Sutras say you got to give it away. And again, this is one of them I'm not going to pronounce, because every time I pronounce it, I usually say Viagra instead of I'm not even going to try. So, but it basically says you got to give it away. You can't keep what you have without giving it away, right? It's got to come back out relative, not just stay in here, right? It's got to come back out another way. And I love that. I particularly like the swadharma part. In that swadharma, right, I don't wish on anybody. You don't have to take the pathway I took to be here. It doesn't matter. You can pretty much count on there will be struggle. There will be struggle. This is simple. It is not easy, right? And then there's that possibility, right? That struggle contributes in such a bigger way to life, to yours and to others. And I am deeply grateful. Yep. Struggle made me. See the boot, right? I love this is his brand, right? That's my guy. I love it. All right. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. I'm doing good with time. I'm making a point to do that lately because I have a tendency to go tons over and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna open up the space for sharing. I'm opening up the space for sharing. You can raise your hand. You can, we can unmute you. You can type in the chat. We got tons of possibilities. All right, someone asked, commercial sex work, how did that happen? For how long? Also, why do men rape? Wow. Now there's a question. I have no idea to answer that last question other than to say that, you know, in other work I do, I refer to where we are living right now, right? And I assert what we're in is the matrix, right? And the matrix is all this conditioning. We are from pure love and light, right? What source broadcast out is pure love and light, right? And there's this layer that's on top of it. Yogis talk about it as Maya, right? A layer that sits on top of that. And what that layer is like the Matrix. I love the Matrix. I watch the Matrix at least once a year. I watch that movie and I hear there's another one coming out. So I'm really excited about that, right? We're in the Matrix and the Matrix is binary, right? It's kind of what I was talking about. Binary, the binary, good, bad, right, wrong, inferior, superior, loss, gain, all of those binaries, right? What you should be, what you shouldn't be, right? And we come into this plane of existence. And as our left brain gets developed, right, it begins to fit us within this binary matrix, right? You're a girl, so you do this, right? You're Black, so you fit here, right? All these things in the binary matrix, right? And we get taught things about men and women, and we get put in this binary matrix. That was a long answer to talk about conditioning. We get conditioned into things. And part of, I would assert, the goal of yoga, the goal of 12 step, all of that is to recognize that there's something beyond this conditioning, right? We're in it, right? And I think this quote belongs to Jesus, right? We're in it, but we don't have to be of it. So we do this deep level of work of stripping off, and 12 step is about this, yoga is about this, of stripping off all this conditioning, right? Patanjali says that this examining our conditioning is our ticket to freedom. That's a paraphrase from Patanjali. I'm paraphrasing it, right? But ultimately, that's what's spoken of there. And 12 step 2, examining our conditioning is our ticket to freedom. We want to live joyous and free, right? It's examining our conditioning that's going to get us there. So that's a long question for that. As far as the commercial sex work, I would assert that that was conditioning too, right? I always think about this from the perspective of Madonna. We're living in a material world, and I was a material girl, right? And I discovered that, at first, the way it started out, right? Pretty much I was at one point a pretty high-priced call girl from that, and that devolved, right? That devolved into getting a hit, right? It devolved over time. So it was an overtime thing. It was over the course of a while. And it was a hard one to come out of, right? Talk about struggle, right? The struggle and a lot of that had to do with coming out of the materiality aspect of things. Right. Thanks for that question. Let's see. I see some other questions in the box, and I see, I love this. All right. Who was your first Hatha yoga teacher? How was Y12SR inspired? Thanks for that question. My first Hatha yoga teacher, I think, was Lilius Follis, and it was on TV. Right? She had Lilius Yoga and Youth. Now I'm dating myself. I don't have any problem talking about that. I just turned, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, I turned 68 years old. So, this goes back a while. It was on a PBS channel. And there was something about it, right? There was something about it years and years ago. And so I would consider her probably my first Hatha yoga teacher. A great deal of my study, my big influence, and a lot of times I start out my stuff talking about my teachers and gratitude to my teachers in this work, and of course in 12 step as well. I've done a lot of work with Gary Kraftso and the Vini Yoga Institute, and I love that work in Vini Yoga. I also, my dear friend and mentor and just everything, she's really all that, is Sean Korn, right? So she's been a big inspiration in both on and off the mat in many ways. Sean is the real deal, right? She really is it. She really taught me what it meant. You can't keep what you have without giving it away. And I love that. I do a lot of work now with the Himalayan Institute, and the spiritual leader in that tradition is Panditji Rajmani Tikanayan. And I'm a big student, right, in that work, which is inspired through Tantra, is Sri Vidya, and it has at its basis Tantra. So that's the course of my study now, and many other paths, right? I do work with Richard Rohr, just on and on and on, right? Many, many paths. All right, and here's one. It says, for many, relapse is a clear and present danger. Can you speak to this, to relapse prevention? Thank you for that question. One of my favorite topics, right? Relapse prevention. I love Yoga Sutra 216. Yoga Sutra, it's been the inspiration for a lot of the 112SR work. And that is, future suffering can be avoided. Future suffering can be avoided. So again, like I was saying, I want to avoid the relapse. What I discovered for me again was I put things in boxes. So that first 8 years of relapse of recovery, first 8 years of recovery, a lot of things happened. Really, a lot of beautiful things happen. Again, all through 12-step program as the basis of the cognitive work. And it just centered on pretty much over the course of those first 8 years is centered on cognitive work. And a lot of things happened over the course of that 8 years. That was when I went back to school. And that was when I got my undergrad degree and my MBA. And, I always loved, I got my undergrad degree with straight A's, my MBA with 1B, right? And so I was really excited about that because I thought I had destroyed all the brain cells, right? So that at least proved to me I hadn't destroyed all the brain cells. And then stuff started going well. And to tell the truth, I got a little full of myself, right? Got a little full of myself. It was then I got the kids back because the kids were separated from me, right? And I got the house back and the car back and the material stuff. I had this great job, right? I had new technology and had this great job and all this kind of stuff. And then it really is an amazing story. The company that I was working for, the software company I was working for, sent me on a trip to a place called Garmisch, Germany. And long story short, I end up in relapse in Germany, right? And it was pretty amazing, right? I hadn't had a drink or a drug. Everything had gone wrong. Hungry. By the time I got there, I was hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And beside that, I was full of myself, right? So all those things were going on and I'm full of myself, right? So I get there and I'm there late, right? Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And when I got there, the conference itself was at dinner and I was hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. All four of those, right? And I get there and what's being served is dessert. And dessert happened to be orange sherbet served in champagne. And in that moment, I chose to go for it, right? I was hungry and that's what I did, right? And so went through, got my meal, the whole 9 yards, but I went back to my room. And my room we were in the Alps, this beautiful room, right? Beautiful, beautiful room. And it happened to have a mini bar in the room. And I drank that night, and I hadn't had a drink or drug in my body for 8 years. And I drank that night like Denzel Washington drank at the end of the movie Flight, right? Even though, all of these things that come back into my life, that night I went back. And then when the conference was over, I drank all the way through the conference. And when the conference was over, instead of flying back to Boston, where I was living at the time, I flew to Amsterdam. And once I got to Amsterdam, I morphed back into the person that I had been 8 years before. You know, I'm searching for my drug of choice in a foreign country. And here's why I say that. And this is why I tell that story, and it has to do with relapse prevention. You know, yoga talks about this thing called samskara, right? Neuroscience talks about losing my words right now. It's the pathways, right? The neural pathways, right? Samskara. Those are always there. They're always there, right? Maybe if you're, you know, some kind of big enlightened spiritual person, that they go away, right? But I'm clear that I'm not that, right? Maybe they go away for Jesus. Maybe they go away for Buddha, right? Maybe someone comes in. As a matter of fact, the Yoga Sutras talk about this. The Yoga Sutras talk about two kinds of yogis. This is Yoga Sutra 219. Two kinds of yogis. One is the extraordinary yogi. And the extraordinary yogi, I would think, would be the Jesus or the Buddha, or you know, someone that comes in here already at an elevated level. And then it talks about the ordinary yogi. The ordinary yogi, I'm sure, is me, right? And it says that for the ordinary yogi, we're the ones that have to keep doing the work. We have to keep coming back, right? I got to keep doing the work, or else that samskara, right? Which turns out to be, you know, when you get down, and it turns out like it's a weed in the garden, right? And you probably know as well as I do, I got a garden outside. I got to go out and de-weed my garden. I got to go out and de-weed it, because that seed is still always there. The seed can always pop up, right? So part of relapse prevention is knowing that I got to keep coming back. I got to keep coming back, doing the work, checking into, you know, what's going on, right, in this minute? What's present now in this being? Are you, first thing I always do, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? Feeling in my being when there is a angst, or when there's some kind of I don't want to say aggravation, but you know, just some activation is the word I'm looking for. Some kind of activation in my being, right? Because I know if it's hysterical, it's historical. I know that, right? So using tools, I got a plethora now of tools in my toolbox, so that once I'm aware that this is going on within my being, right, I got a ton of tools I can use in my toolbox. One of them, meditation, right? I see that. Is meditation important? Meditation is without question a tool in my toolbox, right? The things that I have to do, someone also mentioned Ayurveda, right? And asked about Dharma in Ayurveda. And I'll speak to that in a minute. But one of the things from Ayurveda that I think is really important in supporting sustainable recovery is dinacharya. All right, and dinacharya is your morning routine, right? And there's a part of my brain, right? It's the left thinking part of my brain. And its characteristic is it wants routine. It wants routine, right? So I got a little routine for it in the morning, right? It's, you know, it has to do with tongue brushing, not brushing. Y'all know what I mean. I'm getting too much here, right? Scraping, tongue scraping. That's the word that I'm looking for, right? It has to do with a whole lot of things. And part of that morning routine, right, is to engage the right side of my brain. And meditation is that connection point, right? And I've learned that if I start my day out in this way, given some awareness and attention to all parts, right, it sets me up so that when, not if, when things come up, right? Because they are, right? That's life in the matrix, in this plane of existence. But if I set myself up, right, it prevents me from going south as easily, right? Having people to call, right? When I recognize I'm going south, right? I got a tribe of people who have what I call spiritual consent, right? Spiritual consent is they get to call me out when I'm going south, and I get to talk to them and they talk to me, right? That kind of thing. So it's setting myself up for that, setting myself, because what I know is going back down the neural pathway that I've been down, and it's still there. It's still there, right? Going back down that pathway is not going to serve what I say is most important to me. It's all these tools. That's a part of the relapse prevention. The part I didn't talk about was, I relapsed after 8 years. Then I came back. And then that second part, in that second 4-year period, that was when I was reintroduced to yoga. I was reintroduced to yoga. And I said, yoga's the answer. It's got the answer. I don't need anything else. All I need was this. And 4 years that was, so I went to another extreme, right? And, after 4 years, I relapsed again, right? And then that was when I recognized that it had to be this reintegration. I had to bring, it can't just be, I've made myself such a quote unquote spiritual person that I wasn't connected to any of the rest of the parts of my brain, right? I wasn't connected. And so the whole deal for me and many, many others that I've had the grace to be a part of their recovery process, it's in this integration, right? Reintegrating everybody, everything here gets a voice. It's the Rumi thing, right? There's a writing from Rumi. It's called The Guest House. And I don't have it in front of me and I won't read it, but he talks about in this all these things, and he speaks about them in terms of, sadness, in terms of emotion, in terms of the emotional part of the brain, really. Sadness or grief or sorrow or happiness or any of those things. And the line from that is, welcome and entertain them all. Welcome because when I ignore, deny, pretend, or create pretense around one part, that's what I did. I created pretense around one part. All I needed to be was this perfect yogi, right? All I needed to be. And it was just setting myself up, right? Welcome and entertain them all. It's all parts of ourselves. Thank you for that. What a beautiful question. And yes, introduced to Marma points. That was another question in here. Very powerful, right? Very energetic and powerful places within us. So I love that. Meditation, a part of your recovery, you better believe it. What style of meditation do you do? It depends. That's my favorite answer. My teacher says that the answer to everything is it depends. It right. I love that. It depends. And it depends, right? And it depends on what's going on with me, right? But I can tell you what it always includes for me is work with breath, right? My practice looks like, a little bit of asana, a little bit of pranayama and meditation, right? And it depends on what's going on in my life and in my world, but it really includes all three of those things. A little bit of asana, a little bit of pranayama, and a little bit of meditation. And, the kind of pranayama it is, it depends. I got certain ones that I know really, I like work with bilateral stimulation. right? And there are lots of other, there are trauma healing methods. There's so many things that I can use as tools in my toolbox, right? And part of knowing what tools to use in the toolbox has to do with me coming to know the bio individual being that we are all bio individual beings, right? That's from Ayurveda, right? Those are the basis of the doshas. We're all bio individual beings, right? So in this bio individual being, there's some things that I know work really well, right? Bilateral stimulation is really, really good for me. So that is, for example, alternate nostril breathing or some form of alternate nostril breathing, right? Because it's uniting the two hemispheres, right? And I need that, right? Because what happens with me is one voice in there. And for me, it's usually the emotional brain left side, right? It takes the mic, right? And that's the voice you hear. And that's the voice of fear. It's the voice of, and it's the voice of protection, right? It's all of that, right? So she gets a voice too. She gets a voice too, right? But they get a voice, she gets held. So I'm going off, but I love it. I love it. Discomfort. So somebody put that in there. And here's an invitation to watch, right? Here's an invitation to watch. Watch where you go when things get a little uncomfortable, right? I love this quote. And this is for me, the healing. Because the truth is, we're all addicted to the way we process our reality. We're all addicted to the way we process our reality. And the real healing is, losing that, our, our addiction to how we, our attachments, where we go when we get, watch where you go when it gets a little uncomfortable. And I don't know about you, but I can go to anything, right? I can go to cookies. I don't bit more want that cookie, but the cookie gives me a sense of comfort and ease. And not to diss cookies. Doesn't have anything to do with the cookie, right? Because I could just as much really, that could be something else, right? But I'm going to watch it when it becomes what I use to run away from what I don't want to feel. Right? I can enjoy cookies with my beloved, right? We can sit there and just enjoy it. And I can also use a cookie to run away from what I don't want to feel. I use Amazon and Nordstrom's. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I can't see your hands here, but I bet you do, right? I use, right? I've often said I've been in a codependent relationship with Nordstrom's, right? If I just get that thing, it's going to complete me. Anytime I look outside of myself for something that comes from the inside, right? I know I'm in the disease of the lost self. I'm in the disease of the lost self, right? So it's being with that, right? And using tools for that. All right, let's see. I'm just going to read a few more things and then we're going to close. What's Nikki's full name and where can I listen to her again? You can find anything you want to know from me, about me, relative to this is Y12SR, y12sr.com. It'll give you a ton of information and stuff. Let's just take a breath together. So please, again, this is a tool. Somebody else was asking about tool. Find in the middle. Find in the middle is a tool, right? Just stop it, pause it to find the middle. My feet are on the floor. My butt is in the chair. In this moment, in this precious present moment, I can find the middle. I can find a sense of steadiness in my being. And so that's the invitation. And then soften the grip. Soften the grip of any tension anywhere. Scan your body. If there's tension in the shoulders, tension in the jaw, tension in those places that commonly the issues live in our tissues, can you just soften the grip? Tension in the mind, right? Soften the grip. Not telling it to, we're going to pretend like it's not there. Simply soften the grip just for a moment. And then there's space. And in the space that gets created from finding the middle and softening the grip, invite in breath. Breath is life. And then together in community, because we are not alone, take a big deep breath in. Exhale this one out through your mouth. Let your jaw relax. And then I want to invite you to find some hand position, right? Maybe it's hands at the heart center and prayer hands. Maybe it's one or both hands over your heart. Maybe it's another position, right, of the hands, just in a way to call you in. So it's a hand position that reminds you of your inner world, your inner world. And we said this before, this actually comes of where I learned it, was from Swami Rama. We're citizens of two worlds. There's the inner world and there's the outer world. And when our outer world is sourced from the inner world, everything shows up different. Everything shows up different. So with me, please take another big, big, deep breath in. Exhale, and if you choose, let your chin fall forward towards your chest, your head towards your heart. And then when you inhale, open your eyes, lift your head. Know we're in community. And know, recovery is one of those things that no one can do for you. We all got to do our own work. We all go through struggle, right? And we can't do this one alone. We need each other. We really need each other. So I'm grateful you're here in this work. I'm grateful to be in the damn deal with you. I'm grateful to be here. So thank you all. So grateful. I love it. Yay. Yay.